Good evening, and welcome to Law Talk, the show that brings you the law, the Constitution, and the events of today. Brought to you each month by myself, James Barrett, and Mark Malachowski. So, Mark, what subjects do we have tonight?
Well, we're going to start out with the Trump indictments because it seems like Trump seems to get indicted every time he flies over a blue state. So that's kind of interesting. And then we have the global warming dispute or the global cooling dispute or whatever they call it. And that's about climatology and all that. And finally, we have Jim Morrison and his legacy and his will and whether he should have done a trust.
Okay, well, let's start with the Trump indictments. And to start with, I have a little graph that I put on the screen for everyone. And I just want to bring everyone's attention to some coincidences about the indictment history for Donald Trump. Why don't we start on March 16th? In the Congress, Congressman Comer has been investigating Hunter Biden. And when he revealed on March 16th there was family payments, amazingly enough, on April 4th, Trump was indicted in New York under a criminal complaint that's effectively questionable from the very basis. Then we look at June 8th. The GOP in Congress views bribery information from an FBI 1023 form. Well, funny enough, on June 9th, Trump is indicted for his classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Then, on July 26th, Hunter Biden, his plea deal with the FBI and the IRS falls apart in court. Funny enough, on July 27th, the day later, Trump has additional charges and indictments for the Mar-a-Lago information files. And then on July 31st, Devin Archer testifies before Congress regarding Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. But funny enough, on August 1st, Trump is again indicted for the January 6th, which was literally over 2 years ago.
Well, yeah.
So what do you think about that, Mark?
Well, they're not going to forget about January 6th because if you complain about the election, you're basically go to the gulags. And so really, at first, when they first did this, no one took that 2020 election seriously because it was obviously rigged by anybody who knows anything about statistics or anything, can read and write. And so no one takes elections seriously now. And so now they're doing all these indictments, so no one takes the Department of Justice seriously. This is a method of demoralization. You want your citizens not to trust the elections and not to trust law enforcement, and that's what they're doing. They're not doing this because they care about Trump or they even care about the elections. They've been rigging elections for years, but this one was so blatant that they just did it to demoralize, right? They could have rigged it in secret, but they rigged it in public just to basically mock the American public. They could have assassinated Trump, or they could have got him something else, deported him, or whatever they did, but they want to do this in public so blatantly that means we can get everybody or anybody we want at any time. Kind of like the guy who was in protective custody. Who was the guy
Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, Epstein.
Oh, by the way, he hung himself.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait a minute, can I bring up that?
How about
the cameras are out, and the guards have never been there before they were asleep.
How about what is it? Anthony Bourdain hung himself.
Anthony Bourdain.
Anybody who's got any data. So basically, these people are hanging themselves like crazy. Now, the funny thing about the whole, basically, I can't say who they are. I'm not allowed to say it. But anyway, that intelligence agency that does the dirty work for the Clintons, right? What's funny about it, if they use a lot of Columbo storylines, right? Like the guy gets strangled with the
barbell.
The barbell, and so I mean, come on, you guys, watch some Agatha Christie. I mean, you're using the same murder plots we've been seeing for 20 years.
Hercule Poirot has a lot of good storylines too, like the Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah, but I'm just saying when you start looking at these murders and suicides, it's a lot of the easier stuff. They should maybe read some old Sherlock Holmes and get some better burn plots.
Sherlock Holmes, Murder in the Rue Morgue.
Yeah.
But let me say something about this. This is what's really sad about this entire event. Everything about these indictments. I thought the United States was not a banana republic, but this looks like the same thing they do in African nations, in Venezuela, even Brazil right now has the banana third.
You shouldn't be bad mouthing African nations compared to this. Those things are free and fair things compared to what we got here.
Oh, you mean when the army marches in and takes over a country and says, you're out of here?
Okay,
That's
so
free election.
so what's going on? This is called demoralization. And it's a method of, sapping the energy of the citizens, right? So they just go along with anything.
I mean, so they get so tired of it.
Yeah, it's just repetitive. All just the onslaught of nonsense you have to listen to every day. It's kind of like now you've got rap at the symphony, right? Now you have rap at the symphony, right? Can't even go to the symphony relax. You've got rap. Okay, so this is called demoralization. It's a psyop technique used to destroy Western civilization and turn it into Venezuela, right? And where the buildings and streets smell like urine and the people fight over food scraps and buried in the dumpsters.
Well, wait a minute, that's San Francisco, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, I'm telling you, say, while the globalist cabal elite laugh all the way to the bank. So look, years ago, I was in Hungary, and it was the first time I really was in a deep, communist country. And we're in a train station, and I'm like, what's that smell? And there was a lawyer who had been working in Russia for many years, and he goes, that's the smell of communism. It's the smell of a bathroom that hasn't been cleaned in 50 years. You can't get fired. You can't get promoted.
And you sure don't do your job.
No, well, they have an expression. They say, they pretend to pay us, we pretend to work. But I'm saying nobody, if you can't get fired and you can't get promoted, no one cleans the bathrooms.
Well, what's the answer?
For decades and decades. You just got to grin and bear it. I mean, it's just that smell you got to get used to. You walk around San Francisco, it's the smell of urine. There's people with needles hanging out of themselves with their pants off. It's just something you got to get used to. You got to step over the dead bodies.
Well, I have a question though, but why should we tolerate that, Mark? I'm missing the point why the general population is even tolerating it.
It's our Christian charity.
Oh,
we want to help the poor cabal elite. The elite came here and said, oh my gosh, we've been kicked out of every country we've ever been in because we loan sharked and stole every dime they had and then kidnapped the women and the children and we pimped them into slavery and we made a killing off that. Then we did loan sharking. Nobody wants us. And America was like, oh,
welcome.
Welcome
aboard.
Poor little pimping loan shark dope peddlers. Come on in and run our country. So we got dope peddlers, pimps,
child traffickers.
Well, that's the pimps. Loan sharks, pimps, and dope peddlers running our country. It's nothing but a mob. It's a mob running the country.
Well, I have a question. Is our current government making money off of all this?
Government. Okay. I mean, George Washington said, all the government is the guys with the guns, right? I mean, forget all this flowery nonsense. The government is taking
Who's got the power?
No, it's taking your wealth under pain of death. And pain of death is an interesting theory, right? I mean, when you die, you either go to heaven or hell, or you don't go anywhere. It depends on what you look at afterlife, right? Mm-hmm. But the pain of death is because someone points a gun at you and says, look, you're going to give me 40% of your income because all these other people are too tired to work. And so, they don't want to get up because they're drinking from home. I mean, they're working.
Okay, I'm going to leave it at this pain of death because I think we're going to move on to our next subject, and hopefully we'll get out of the pain of death to go into the next subject.
Okay.
And what is our next subject?
Okay, global warming.
Global warming?
Okay, whether most scientists outside climatology believe that global warming is happening is less relevant than what climatologists do. There was a letter of 50 leading members of the American Meteorological Society. Meteorologists who warned about the policies promoted by environmental pressure groups. The policy initiatives derive from highly uncertain scientific theories. They are based on unsupported assumption that a catastrophic global warming follows from the burning of fossil fuel and requires immediate action. We do not agree. So the people who do this for a living say this is a bunch of nonsense. But the lobbyists, they have a lot of power.
Wait a minute. Let me add in something here. When you start thinking about the environmental movement, what it's turned into, it's more like a religion. It's not science per se, but they've been indoctrinated for so many, it's going on multiple generations of indoctrination about, oh my God, the human being in fossil fuels, and all of this is destroying the earth. Well, that's all fine and dandy, except when you're talking about meteorologists are saying, no, they're not, and nobody wants to listen to it. And why no one's listening to it? Because there's no money into listening to that.
Well, also,
that goes right to what you
and I think it goes back to usually rent seeking, right?
Yeah.
Rent seeking is, let's say I'm back in Rome and 100 AD, and I've got a red apple orchard, and the next guy's got green apples next to me, and he's killing me, right? Everyone likes his green apples.
They don't like the red apples.
So when I go to a senator and I go, I can give you some money for your campaign to become a senator of Rome here, but you got to pass the law that red apples are poisonous. And so the guy gets to be senator and he passes the law, red apples are poisonous. So all of a sudden the guy with the red apples can't sell. So what does the green apple guy do? He does great. He buys up the red apple orchards at a penny of $1, right?
Yeah.
And then once he has all the red apple orchards, he goes, and then he sells all his green apples, orchards, and then he goes to a senator, well, you're running again, but I really messed up. It turns out it's the green apples that are poisonous, right? And so then they make green apples, and this is called rent seeking, and it goes back and forth. So it's paper bags, plastic bags, electricity, gas, straws. It doesn't matter.
Toothpicks,
it doesn't matter
fork.
what it is. It's green apples.
Take out food bags.
It's red apples, green apples. You pass a law, you buy up the thing on a penny and $1, like San Francisco, okay? It's a complete desert, right? It's a complete mess, okay? Hilton walked away with away from $2.5 billion, right? They had $2.5 million in value in that property. And they said, I don't want it. I'm walking away. Okay, so what's going to happen? They don't have any cops because the cops were all fired.
They're afraid to go out.
Well, the cops were, if they use their guns, they'd go up for murder one. They know that. So the cops aren't going to go outside. They don't even go into the lobby of the cop shop. They don't go in the lobby of the cop shop. There's people with no clothes on shooting up in the lobby of the cop shops. That's the police station. Okay, because the cops will not go fly the bulletproof glass because they know if they do anything, they'll be indicted for murder. So that's your cops. So there's no cops. Forget about cops. No cops are coming for murders, for rapes, or anything.
Or
no
drug dealing, or anything in public.
Nothing's going to happen. It's over.
Nothing's going to happen.
Nothing's going to happen. So what's going to happen is so all these, and then you go in and people come in and take armloads of stuff out of every store.
Oh, yeah.
All the stores shut down.
Nordstrom, goodbye, Saks Smith,
everything.
All the hotels are overrun. Old
Navy, everything's gone, and everything's boarded up. Now, when it gets bad enough that somebody can come along and buy up all of Market Street on a penny and $1, then boom, all the cops come back.
All the cops are going to come back, and they're going to have a change. In fact, I have a question.
Green apples, red apples.
Green apples or red apples. And I have a question. Who's been selecting the clowns and mayors after mayors after mayors in San Francisco? Was it based on the idea this is going to be a real estate empire in 20 years, 30 years? Is that what's been going on here, Mark?
If I knew how to arbitrage this thing, I wouldn't be working anymore. I'm not in the club, right? All these other people are in the club. There's certain cabal, there's certain elite that are in the club. They know how long they're going to drive down the price. They know the day that it's going to get turned around. We don't know because we're basically chattel. We're basically peasants.
Okay, while we're talking about chattel, let's go back to the environmental movement. That's actually a religious philosophy amongst people.
Red apples, green apples.
Green apples, and there's no science really supporting it other than people with loud mouths and a constant media drum about the environment. Now let's talk about some classic failures that they're repeating again. Who collected about $500 million, and that company was Solyndra. Right. Which immediately got $500 million, which they shouldn't have got $1 because they had no proof and no way to make anything. And of course,
but they had a nice building.
They had a nice building in Fremont. I've been there.
I walked through the building. It was a beautiful building.
Funny enough, that should have been a harbinger for what was coming because Solyndra got $500 million. All the money vanished, and they closed. And funny enough, nobody paid the price.
Didn't you ever see the play, The Producers?
Yes, I did.
You can make more money off a play that goes under than a successful play, right? And so these guys, I don't know if anyone's ever seen The Producers, but it's hilarious. I saw it on Broadway. Wonderful thing. I had balcony seats. And it was just hilarious. And these guys are like, if the thing goes under, then you make a lot of money, right? But if the thing succeeds, then you got to pay everybody off.
Then you got to pay everyone off. But see, this started under the Obama administration where the entire environment.
This has been going on since the Greeks.
I know, but I'm just talking about what the game plan that's been going on. And now what we have is wind farms, solar farms, and if you talk to anybody that's involved in energy, they will tell you zero wind will produce enough to fund maybe my house.
Okay, but listen, this is what the guys say. They go, The thing is, the original draft document didn't say that there was that climate change was induced by humans, that it occurred. The original draft document did not say this. What happened was the IPCC, which is the international somebody, some lobbyist, which is widely believed to prove that climate change induced by humans has occurred. The original draft document did not say that. What happened was the policymakers' summary, which became the take-home message for politicians, altered the conclusions of the scientists.
Oh, altered.
So
you mean for political reasons?
And so, well, they were just doing what they're paid to do.
They interpreted.
This led Dr. Frederick Sitz, former head of the United States National Academy of Science, to write, in more than 60 years a member of the American scientific community, I've never witnessed a more disturbing corruption of the peer review process, the events that led to this IPCC report, which is what they based all this stuff, and they bankrupted millions of people and thousands or hundreds of thousands of businesses to come up with this silly stuff. And instead of installing electrical lines and fixing the infrastructure, like they should have done with the, I don't know how much the infrastructure bill was, trillions, like they should have fixed that.
Build back better?
They should have fixed the electrical lines on Maui. But no!
Heaven forbid they want to fix anything.
They don't want to.
No, they want to create new things. And that's why right now, even Elon Musk says, if everyone bought a Tesla, the country would be shut down electrically because there is no infrastructure.
No, but the infrastructure was all like for their backroom deals with their friends and kickbacks. The infrastructure, like the people, who are the transients and the vagrants and the indigents on the streets, there's no infrastructure for those guys. No infrastructure. The schools, which are a mess, no infrastructure for those guys. The electrical lines in Maui, which caused the whole place to burn down.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yeah, that's the lawyers want you to think that.
Well, I was thinking that might be a good lawsuit.
Yeah, you know what? You know what was interesting though on the first day?
Did you see the video? Did you see the video?
Yeah, okay. I saw a video after the fact, but the first day, the first reports from the fire said there's a homeless encampment on that side of Lahaina, and I'm aware of that because I've driven by it. There's a huge homeless encampment,
Heck, I
and
stayed
people
there.
are cooking all day long, and they're cooking fish.
Are
and
they
everything
cooking
else.
meth?
Yeah, what else? You never know. But the fire, allegedly, the first day was actually started from the homeless.
Actually, wait a minute. I take great umbrage to the expression homeless. Every person in the United States is homeless. Even if you own a even if you own a $10 million house, you still got to pay $100,000 a year in property tax, right? No. If you don't pay that, they take your house.
Hey, we are
so
homeless.
Basically, everybody's homeless. There's nobody. Nobody owns. But there's indigents and there's vagrants. Indigents are mentally retarded or crippled. And vagrants could work if they want, but they don't.
They choose not to. And on that happy note, I think we're going to move on to our third topic of the night, which is exciting if you're a rock aficionado. And we're going to talk about the will that Jim Morrison tried to create. Mark, tell us about it.
Well, for the blast for the past, if you're talking for the Wells, is Jim Morrison was a famous rock star
of the Doors
back in the 60s, and he was actually more of a poet than anything.
He was a very good poet.
He did some great poetry, and I forget where he went. I think he went to L.A. art, and he met all his band members there, and they did different art majors, but they kind of kidded around and decided, oh, well, let's go to the Whiskey A Go-Go and play some stuff, and everybody loved it, right? And so it was kind of a funny thing because it wasn't really like a produced thing. It's like Clash was produced, right? Yeah. Like some bands were like, okay, you had a producer who produced them. These guys just kind of got thrown together, and I think that's why people liked them. Of course, it had a downside because they were kind of like, well, how do you say? The problem is, the Jim anyway. It's like if you're taking some drugs, right, you should at least only take one drug at a time. And he kind of mixed them, and that caused a problem. And so he died at 27, which is pretty young.
Yeah, he died in a bathtub in Paris.
Yeah, he died in a bathtub, but he was like apparently overdosed on
on a variety of things, including wine.
Yeah,
fine Parisian wine.
But the point of the matter is, when you mix, it's not good. And now we have say for example, San Francisco, there's a whole. Everybody on the street, I would say probably a third of the population is taking what they call speedball, which is heroin and fentanyl mixed with methamphetamine. And of course, the city gives out syringes.
Free ones.
And then a lot of people who, I wouldn't say that they actually work for the city, but the city doesn't stop them from dealing it, right? There's no stopping it. I mean, it's all there on the street for anyone to see. You can drive down there, you can see them.
Yeah, but in Jim Morrison's day, they didn't have fentanyl. They didn't have any of that, and they actually had probably a higher quality, and And his problem was he always mixed alcohol with
Barbiturates,
and Coke and all that.
That
other
happened to
shit.
Hendrix too. Was barbiturates.
Yeah, that's the
Barbiturates are not so good for you.
Especially when you're drinking.
When you're drinking, it's really bad. Okay, and so.
So what happened about him after he died?
He didn't have a lot of money, but he had a 25% interest in the Doors.
Which, by the way.
And the Doors worth a lot. Okay, and so he had a girlfriend, Pamela Curson, and if you watch the Doors movie, that's kind of the story of their love affair, and I like Thanksgiving dinner. That's the great shot, you know.
Well, can I say one thing? The Doors just became commercially viable with their L.A. Woman album.
Right, took a few
right,
albums.
right at the very point where they were going to be the most commercially successful, in advance of a lot of other bands at the time. He died.
Well, the thing
so
about
this
it,
is what
like I said,
the story is.
It was kind of a garage band, and it just really didn't take off right away, and then unfortunately passed. But so Morrison didn't get along with his parents, right? And he had a girlfriend, which like every other relation, had its ups and downs, but I think they got along pretty good. They didn't get married. So what he did is he said in his will, I'm going to give everything to my girlfriend, right? Well, and then she died soon after that. I don't know why.
3 years.
I don't want to ask why. Who knows? But it's none of my business.
She got a lot of money.
But she got money, but she didn't last long, kind of burnt out or whatever. And then Morrison's parents said, well, wait a minute. Where's the money for us, right? So he was incompetent to make a will, and that the common law.
Was it a holographic will?
I don't remember.
I tried to find this, and it didn't really talk about.
But this comes to I just don't know. The answer is I don't know. But what's interesting is they're talking about a common law marriage to Corson. Well, there's no common law marriage in California.
So why were they quoting that even?
So that's kind of a weird thing because it's not common law. It was just a will, and he gave it like
he was a girlfriend.
Like a friend or anybody. You could give it to anybody.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's an interesting common law marriage. There are states. Utah's common law. There's several, like 7 or 8 states are common law, which I think is 7 years. California is what they call no-fault divorce, which is like, it's not really like a marriage. When you get married in California, it's kind of like, until she finds a guy who's making more money and she wants to take half your stuff. And there's a guy who buys a lottery ticket and then, okay. Anyway.
We don't need that one.
But he's late.
$6?
Where are you? Wait, here's $6. Okay, so anyway, so Morrison's had some trouble with this. If Morrison had just died, it would have gone up to him because
in California, if you don't have a will,
intestate would go to
intestate succession, which means in this case,
he didn't have any kids.
It would have gone to his parents,
or his
and it would have gone to
brother,
his brother and his sister,
or his kids first, but he didn't have any kids.
So he had no kids. So then it goes back up through the family lineage. And what's happening here is because he had this will where he left it to the girlfriend, the girlfriend's parents wanted the money because they said, I should get it.
But I'm confused here, and I don't do divorce law, and I never will. I mean, it's just not one of my cup of tea. But because it has child custody, and I just don't, it's just very nasty stuff. There's a lot of money in it, but I don't need that money. But it said Corson still would have inherited everything as Morrison's surviving spouse. And I'm just confused why they use that argument. Because he was never married and there's no common law.
Never married and there's no such thing as a spouse in California.
So I think maybe the people writing this article were probably what I call DFH. You know what that is?
No.
Okay, well, everyone says I'm working from home.
Yeah.
I call that DFH, drinking from home.
Drinking from home.
Oh, I'm drinking from home. You call somebody at 2:30 and they're like, well, I haven't had a shower yet, and I can't put the video on.
No, that's because they've been working all morning.
Oh yeah, you're drinking from home. Yeah, I don't believe in working from home. I understand. I believe in drinking from home. Okay, so anyway.
I think that's the only place you really should drink safely.
Yeah, that's true. It is
drinking at home.
Drinking at home. Okay, especially if you're working for the government, they pay you.
Well, then in that case, they pay you anyway.
They pay you by the hour.
And by the way, as long as they don't catch you on a Zoom doing something, you're pretty much good to go.
Don't go there. Don't go there.
Okay, let's go back to Jim.
No, that's if you work in the TV industry.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so Jim.
CNN.
And so anyway, CNN. If you work for CNN, be careful.
You better watch out for those Zooms.
Watch out. Make sure you have the off button there.
Yeah.
By this time, and
you're on mute.
Yeah. Well, mute wasn't the problem.
Yeah, I know.
It was the video.
Mute camera.
The video. Okay, so by the time.
So what happened?
Okay, so the Doors got making more and more money, and finally
they made a lot of money.
The two parents kind of settled something, and the parents split it up.
They split it 50-50.
But I think it's probably
by the way,
I think is a pretty reasonable thing.
Okay, by the way, the key problem was the girlfriend didn't have a will either.
Right.
So she's looking at intestate succession.
Right.
She had no siblings.
Right.
And so that went to the parents. But Morrison's parents came in and said, just a minute.
Right.
We're putting a stop to all this. And that raises the question about the will itself. No one contested the validity of the will.
No, they
contested the validity.
No, they said he didn't have capacity because
he didn't have capacity
because he was on drugs. Right.
That's right, because he was on drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, but he was. But the thing is, it's kind of like a will. If you can think you're Napoleon, you still write a will.
I have a question. If you can sing a song and you remember the words, you
how about
have capacity.
In a Garden of Eden? That's supposed to be in the Garden of Eden. You know that?
No, I did not.
That when the guy's up there going in the Garden of Eden, he's supposed to be saying in the Garden of Eden, but he's so wasted, it came out in the Garden of Eden, and that became famous.
And by the way, that went on for a whole album.
Well, that's because everybody was that wasted in that period
anything.
that any time they try to sing in the Garden of Eden, they went in the Garden of Eden.
So but anyway, so
that's rock history.
Okay, so to end off the rock history on this point, it's pretty straightforward. You take a lesson from a lot of these.
You should have got a trust.
You should have had a will and a trust,
well,
spelling out.
Trust.
And by the way, it doesn't matter. If we remember, we've looked at Prince.
Right.
We looked at the multiple wills of Aretha Franklin, and what we see is a consistent pattern of problems.
Well, the thing is, because rock stars do not trust lawyers. And they don't trust their managers, they don't trust lawyers, because they've all been taken advantage of these people, and they just don't trust them.
Okay.
And so that's why they shy away from it, and they try to do it themselves, and they goof it up.
Okay, well, listen, on that happy note of rock stars not paying attention to the legal profession, I'd like to thank you for tonight for another exciting show of Law Talk. Mark, I look forward to our next month, where we're going to have 3 more subjects that will make us think.
And by then, we might win the lottery.
And you would have $6.
You have $6. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. 12.
12 bucks.
12.